Okay, the second question that he asked was about Old Testament places in the Bible where it says, could you try to call back? I know I can see that you're still online on WhatsApp. Can you call back? Is it possible for you to call back? If you can, please feel free to call back. The second question was, where in the Bible does it say that the moon regulates the Sabbath? Where does it say that the moon regulates the Sabbath? I would love for you to call back. The person that asked this question, please feel free to call back right now if you can. So the question is, where in the Bible does it say that the moon regulates the Sabbath? Well, let's go to Genesis chapter 1, verse 14 and verse 16. Okay. Before we do that, let's go to Leviticus 23. Let's go to Leviticus 23. So we're going to use these scriptures to see where it says that the moon regulates the Sabbath. So first, let's go and read about the commandment about the Sabbath. And then we'll go and look at how we're supposed to observe it, how we're supposed to know when the Sabbath day is. So pay attention very closely. If you're not able to call in, that's fine. But pay attention. We're dealing with your question right now. So the question is, where in the Bible does it say that the moon regulates the Sabbath? First thing we want to look at is Leviticus chapter 23. Let's look at Leviticus chapter 23 from verse 1. Leviticus chapter 23. It says, and Yah spoke to Moses, saying, speak to the children of Israel, and say to them, the feasts of Yah, which you shall. All right. Okay, it looks like you're calling in. Okay, can you hear me? Can you hear me? Okay, so just hold on, okay? Because I'm not going to interrupt to talk to you right now. Hold on until I finish reading this, and then we can continue. But I'm glad that you called in. So let's look at this together. Let's look at it together. Now that you're on the line, you are more than welcome to jump in. And, so that I'm glad that you called back. I prefer to talk to somebody when they have any questions so that we can look at the scriptures together. The question is, where in the Bible does it say that the moon should be used to keep the Sabbath? Okay. Let's go to Leviticus chapter 23 from verse 1. And Yah spoke to Moses, saying, speak to the children of Israel, and say to them, the feasts of Yah, which you shall proclaim to be holy convocation, are holy convocation. These are my feasts. So Leviticus chapter 23 verse 1 and 2 say that these are the feasts of the Most High, which we shall proclaim to be a holy convocation, a worship day, a day that we meet, we congregate, we convocate to worship the Most High. Verse 3, Leviticus 23 verse 3, 6 days shall work be done, but the 7th day is a Sabbath of solemn rest, a holy convocation to you. You shall do no work on it. It is a Sabbath. It is the Sabbath of Yah in all your dwellings. So these are feasts. The Sabbath is categorized as a feast day according to Leviticus chapter 23. Okay, so let's go to Genesis chapter 1. Genesis chapter 1. Verse 14 to verse 16. Genesis chapter 1 verse 14 to verse chapter 14 to verse 16. Genesis chapter 1 verse 14 to verse 16, not chapter, but chapter 1. We're in chapter 1 right now. It says, verse 14, Genesis chapter 1 verse 14. Then Elohim said, let there be light in the firmament of the heavens to divide the day from the night. Let them be for signs and seasons, and for days and for years. Verse 15, and let them be for light in the firmament of the heavens to give light on the earth. And it was so. Verse 16, and Elohim made two great lights, the greater light to rule the day, and the lesser light to rule the night. He made the stars also. So according to Genesis chapter 1 verse 14, the Most High made, he said, I'm going to read that again. Genesis chapter 1 verse 14. Then Elohim said, let there be lights in the firmament of the heavens to divide the day and the night. Let them be for signs, for seasons, for days, and for years. Okay, the key words here is let them be for signs, for seasons, and for days and years. So spring, you have during the spring season, during the summer season, during the winter season. These are seasons. So if this light that the Most High said, let there be light. So when he created those lights, and he tells you in Genesis chapter 1 from verse 14 that these lights are supposed to be for signs, for seasons, and for days, and for years. For signs, for seasons, for days, and for years. That's what this light. So when you want to find out when it's when, where do you go to? You have to go to those lights. Is this complicated? If it is, make a comment and let me know. Does that not make any sense? He created this, like he created fruits. He created fruit and food that grow on trees. He gave it to us as food. When you're hungry, you go after apples, oranges, plantains, bananas, natural things. That's what you eat because you're hungry. When you want to know when is when, you look up and look at the sun. If you want to know, when the sun is when the sun is going down, you know that this is evening. This is evening. When the sun is going up, you know that this is morning. When the sun is all the way up in the sky, you know that this is midday. That's what you look at when you want to find out when it's when. When you want to find out when the month begins, you look at the moon. Right now, this is the first Sabbath, the first week of the month that we're in right now. So according to Genesis chapter 1 from verse 14, he created these two great lights for them to be used to identify the seasons, the days, and the years. There is no other thing that the Most High gave us for us to use as a tool to identify the days, the seasons. There's no other. Right now, you have the sun and the moon, and then you have the man-made calendar. That's it. Do you have any other way of finding out? As a calendar. That's it. That's all we have. We have the sun and the moon, and we have the man-made calendar. So which one did you think that the Israelite was using when there was no printer, when there was no paper? What were they using? I'm going to leave you with that question. So, but Genesis chapter 1 verse 14 tells us the reason why he made the sun and the moon. Genesis chapter 1 verse 14 to verse 16. For signs and for seasons. This is a very common sense thing. Very basic understanding. The Most High cannot tell you to observe the Sabbath and not give you a calendar. Unless if you don't know what season means. I gave you an example during the winter. That is the winter season. During the summer, that is the summer season. During the spring, that is the spring season. These are seasons. During the winter, it's cold. During the summer, it's hot. These are seasons. And the Bible tells you in Genesis chapter 1 from verse 14 to 16 that he created the sun and the moon for us to use it to know when it's when. Like you use the sun, it regulates the day. By looking at the sun, you can be able to tell, oh man, it's about to get, the day is almost over. Why? Because you can see that the sun is going down. That lets you know that the day is almost, the daylight, you better hurry up because daylight is about to be gone. Let's go to Psalm 104, verse 19. Psalm 104, verse 19. Psalm 104 verse 19. Psalm 104 verse 19. It says this. Psalm 104 verse 19. He appointed the moon for seasons. The sun knows it's going down. So he appointed the moon for seasons. Look at how the phases of the moon changes every night. Take a look at this if you're watching on the screen. Look at this. Do you think that this is a coincidence? Psalm 104 verse 19 say that he appointed the moon. He appointed the moon for seasons. Psalm 104 verse 19. He appointed the moon for seasons. So what you're seeing here in this chart, does this look like a coincidence? This is what the moon does every month. From the beginning of the month, the phases of the moon will come out. And the phases of the moon will begin to increase. Is it a coincidence that 7 days after the new moon, the moon is 50% full? Is that a coincidence that 7 days after that, the moon is 100% full? Is it a coincidence that, is this a coincidence? The question was an honest question. And I thank you very much for asking that question. That's an honest question. Where in the Bible does it say that the moon regulates the Sabbath? And that's what we're looking at right now. So it says in Psalm 104 verse 19, he appointed the moon for seasons. It's a time-keeping instrument that the Most High put up in the sky. Let's go to Sirach. Sirach chapter 43. Sirach chapter 43. Sirach 43 verse 6 to verse 8. Sirach 43 verse 6 to verse 8. This is in the Apocrypha. Again, if you don't have the book of Sirach, use your phone and Google it. Use your phone and Google the book of Sirach. It's spelled S-I-R-A-C-H. Google it and you will see it. Sirach chapter 43 verse 6 to verse 8. Sirach 43. And so you can, I think they call it Ecclesiasticus also. Not Ecclesiastics, Ecclesiasticus. Or you can simply search for Sirach chapter 43 verse 6 to verse 8. It says, it is the moon that marks the changing of seasons, governing the times, their everlasting sign. So this tells you, Sirach, please pull it up yourself. Please read it yourself. Just pull it up and read it for yourself. It tells you, this is a book that used to be in the King James Version. If you go and look for the original King James, the very first King James that was printed, the 1611 version of King James, it has the book of Sirach in it, part of the Apocrypha. So this is not a book that was written 300 years ago, or 100 years ago, or 50 years ago. No, this is a book that was written thousands of years ago. It tells you that the moon is to be used for timekeeping. Sirach 43, verse 6 to verse 8. It is the moon that marks the changing of seasons, governing the times. It's time to keep the Sabbath. It's time to keep the Passover. Oh, it's time to go back to work. The Sabbath is over. By what the phases of the moon is doing. Verse 6, Sirach chapter 43 verse 6. It is the moon that marks the changing of season, governing the times, their everlasting sign. Verse 7, from the moon comes the sign for feast days. Did we not see in Leviticus chapter 23 that these are the feast of Yah that you should keep? These are the feast of God that you should observe. And the Sabbath was mentioned as the very first feast day. The Sabbath was mentioned when he tells you that these are my feast days that you need to observe. The very first thing that was mentioned in verse 3. Leviticus chapter 23 verse 3. That was the reason why I had to take you to Leviticus chapter 23 first. Because it says that the Sabbath is the very first of his feast days. Leviticus 23 verse 3. Leviticus 23 verse 3. The Sabbath is the very first of the feast days. Here in Sirach chapter 43. Sirach 43 verse 7. Sirach 43 verse 7 says that from the moon comes the sign for the festival days. Feast days. A light that wanes when it completes its course, which is what you're seeing on the screen. Verse 8, Sirach 43 verse 8. The moon, as its name suggests, renew itself. How marvelous it is in this change, and a beacon to the host of on high, shining in the vault of the heaven. So the Most High over here in verse 7 tells you that the moon, from the moon comes the sign for festival. That's exactly what you're looking at in this screen. If you're able to see this screen right on your phone or on your computer or on your TV, however you're watching this right now. As it says in Sirach chapter 43 verse 7, the moon gives us, that's when we find out the moon, from the moon comes the sign for feast days. The Sabbath was mentioned in Leviticus 23 as the very first of that feast days. How difficult is this? This is not difficult at all. This is very simple to understand. This is not complicated. Okay, so let's go to 1 Samuel chapter 20. 1 Samuel chapter 20. 1 Samuel chapter 20. Again, the question was where in the Bible does
this internet connection isn't strong enough at the moment.
The question is where in the... Okay, I want to make sure that I'm on here. I have no idea what they're talking about, what this thing is saying. I hope that it's not as pertain to the broadcast that is going on right now. I hope that you guys can hear me and you can hear me. I hope you can hear me and you can hear me and see me live. All right, so the question was, where in the Bible does it say that we should use the moon to keep the Sabbath? That was the question. Where in the Bible does it say that we should use the moon to observe the Sabbath? And that's what we're looking at right now. We're looking at that right now to see where in the Bible it says that we should use the moon to observe the Sabbath. So another place is 2 Samuel. I think I've given enough scriptures, but if you look at 1 Samuel chapter 20, 1 Samuel chapter 20, you will see that David, before David, when he was talking with Jonathan, 1 Samuel chapter 20, David was talking with Jonathan, and he said that tomorrow is the new moon. Tomorrow is the new moon. And Jonathan said to David, you will be missed because your place is going to be empty. Your seat will be empty. You will be missed. If you read 1 Samuel chapter 20, you will clearly see that they were using the moon as their calendar. They were using the moon as their calendar. Another place in the New Testament or in the Gospels is found in Colossians chapter 2, verse 16. So in Colossians chapter 2, verse 16, you are going to read about Paul. Paul was telling the early followers of Christ not to let anybody condemn them or judge them for observing the Sabbath day and observing the new moon days and observing the feast days. It's impossible to observe the Sabbath day or to observe the new moon day using a man-made calendar, because man-made calendar does not recognize the new moon day. There's nowhere in the man-made calendar that you can observe the new moon day. It does not recognize the new moon day. So what does that tell you about the early followers of Christ? If we have Colossians chapter 2 verse 16, if we have Paul telling them not to let anybody condemn them, he was encouraging them not to allow anyone to condemn them or to judge them for observing the Sabbath day, observing the feast days, and observing the new moon day. If he was telling them that, what does that tell you? Because if you look at a man-made calendar, pull up your phone, look at that calendar on your phone, look at the calendar on the wall, look at the calendar, look at the man-made calendar. It does not recognize the new moon day. So for Paul to be telling these people not to let anybody condemn them or to judge them, that means that they were observing the new moon day. And you can't do that using a Gregorian calendar, an European or Roman calendar. Roman calendar does not recognize a new moon day. That tells you that they were using the moon as their calendar. Look at the death of Christ. He said that he was going to be on the ground for 3 days and a night. So it's either Christ was lying, or those that claim that he died on Friday and was buried on Friday and resurrected on Sunday evening, they are lying. Somebody has to be lying here. Do the math. Friday evening to Sunday evening. Is that 3 days and 3 nights? 3 days, 3 nights. Is that 3 days and 3 nights? They were not using a man-made calendar during the time of Christ. They were using the moon as their calendar, as you can see in Colossians chapter 2, verse 16. Colossians 2:16. The only reason why Paul was encouraged by using the moon, it's that simple. Look at a new moon day right here. This is a new moon day. The only reason why you can observe a new moon day is by using the moon. There's no other way you can observe a new moon day. New moon day is only found at the beginning of the month. New moon day is an actual day at the beginning of the month. That's when you observe a new moon day. So when you have Paul telling the early followers of Christ not to let anybody condemn them or judge them for observing a new moon day, that tells you that they were using the moon as their calendar. It's that simple. This is not complicated. It's only complicated for those people who are not being honest, who are looking for a loophole, who will love to continue keeping the Sabbath on Saturday. Those that don't want to give up Saturday worship because it's much easier. It's convenient. It's easier for you to get Saturday off from your job. It tells you that the way you find out the days of the festival is through the moon. And that includes the Sabbath. According to Leviticus chapter 33, verse 7 tells you that how you find out when that Sabbath day is through the moon. From verse 6, verse 7 and verse 8. makes it clear that the moon regulates the Sabbath. I think hopefully you're satisfied. Hopefully you can clearly see all these scriptures and see when we're supposed to observe the Sabbath and how it's regulated. I hope this answers your question. You are more than welcome to call back if you are not. If you have any more question, the brethren that asked this question, I know that you're having technical problems. It looks like you are in India. If I'm not mistaken, you're very far away. So the connection is not very strong. I totally do understand. Connection is not very strong. So you can call back if you have any more question, or if this makes any sense or not. Your question, you asked 2 questions. I spent probably almost an hour trying to make sure that I go through the Bible and answer your question. And you can clearly see all these scriptures. Genesis chapter 1 verse 14 to verse 16. Sirach chapter 43 verse 6 to verse 8. Psalm 104 verse 19. These places shows you that we are supposed to use the moon as our calendar. We are supposed to use, and that's exactly what the Hebrew Israelite used as their calendar. It's been up there in the sky since the day of creation till this day. Nobody has tampered with it. Nobody have touched it. Nobody have stepped foot on it. Oh yeah, I just said that. Yeah, nobody have stepped their foot on the moon. Nobody. Nobody, including the filthy Gentiles that claim that they went to the moon. They are liars. The Americans that claim that they went to the moon, that is a filthy lie. They did not go to the moon. Now, you might want to do yourself a favor and just sit down and study about that. They didn't go to the moon. The Most High will never allow anyone to step their foot on the moon. They didn't go to the moon. They claim that they went to the moon. That they are still trying to find out how to go back to the moon. Now, maybe that makes sense to you. So, in the 60s, they went to the moon. Here we are. They went to the moon in the 60s. They were able to develop technology that allows them to go to the moon in the 60s, right? That makes sense. But then they came back. They destroyed all the technologies. I'm talking about according to NASA. According to NASA. I'm not going to sit here and tell you what I don't know. This is according to them. Go look it up. NASA destroyed those technologies. And then from the 60s till this day, they are still trying to figure out how to go back to the moon. Does that make any sense to you? They were able to have that technology before, 1960. And then fast forward, how many years from that time till now, they are still trying to find out how to go back to the moon. If you believe that, you are stupid. 20 years ago, our cell phone is gigantic. 2 pounds, like this. You have to hold your cell phone like this. You have to grab it and hold it. It's 2 pounds. Your cell phone was 2 pounds 20 years ago. Gigantic. You have to go somewhere like in a hill and then open it up and be able to dial and make phone call, Nokia to Nokia. Gigantic cell phone. That was about 20 years ago or so. Even more than that, 25 years ago, 30 years ago. It was huge. It's your clock. It's your alarm clock. It's your calendar. It's your calculator. Name it. You can do it with this. You can see me live right now. This is your TV now. Your cell phone is now your TV. Your cell phone is now your radio. This is how fast technology have developed. And yet, NASA is still trying to figure out how to go back to the moon. And you believe that crap. They never went to the moon. It was all politics. It was all politics. And the Bible actually mentioned this in the book of Revelation. That was all politics, and it was one of the lies that the Europeans have used to get ahead of the rest of the nations. By claiming that they went to the moon. We're going to study about the mark of the beast. When we study about the mark of the beast, we'll get a little bit further into this. The Bible tells you that they're going to do this. In Revelation chapter 13, they did it when they claimed that they went to the moon. That gave them an advantage. That was a psychological attack on the rest of the world. Psychological attack. That disabled the rest of the countries. Psychologically, it was a psychological attack on the rest of the world. Because by claiming that they went to the moon, that was a psychological intimidation. Because that then shows that they're better than you. If they're so smart enough, intelligent enough, technologically advanced enough to go to the moon, that makes you begin to feel that they are more superior than you. You begin to feel that they have something that they don't. They have something that you don't have. The Bible did mention this in Revelation chapter 13, that something like this was going to happen by the beast. So no, they didn't go to the moon, because right now there is something that I'm quoting them, there is something that NASA calls Van Allen belt. Go look it up. Go type it into Google. Van Allen belt. That Van Allen belt is something that the Most High put up in the sky. Nobody can go past Van Allen belt. You cannot go past that. No rocket, no human can pass it. If you go past that, you die. You get frozen alive. You get burned to death. The radiation will fry you up. Till this day, NASA is still studying to find out how to go past Van Allen belt. The question is, if you guys for the past 50 years or so, or 60 years, however long, for the past 40 years, if you are still studying, wasting millions of dollars and studying how to pass the Van Allen belt, that radiation that was put in the sky, that you cannot get through, you need to pass it in order to get to the sun or the moon. By their own admission, they cannot go past through that. And they are right now, as I speak, they are studying on how to go past Van Allen belt. The question is, how were they able to pass it in the 1960s to get to the moon? According to them, you can't get to the moon until you pass Van Allen belt. The radiation is so dangerous that that thing will fry you. So they have to now first find out how to go past it before they can get to the moon. So the question that anybody with any kind of common sense in their head will ask is, okay, so if you guys are still studying how to pass, why can't you pass that belt just like you did in the 1960s? See, Satan is a liar. It shouldn't be wonder if his children are also liars. There's nothing to marvelous about that. So nobody has stepped foot on the moon, and nobody will ever step foot on the moon. The moon is the calendar. The sun and the moon is the calendar. Nobody can go there. It was a psychological war on the rest of the world. They didn't go to no moon. The whole thing was staged and filmed in the military base. The whole thing was filmed. They hired the best of the Hollywood movie producers. The man that did that production, he's dead. He passed away. The man that did the production. Go and watch the liar Armstrong that claimed that he went to the moon. Go and watch his interviews. If you have any kind of sense in your head and you watch him dodge questions, somebody that went to the moon and is excited, he will be happy to answer any question that you have about the moon. Watch that man. He lived a miserable life before he died. You watch how he was, he was very sketchy. Before that so-called lunar landed on the moon, there was picture. Who took that picture? If they were the first to go to the moon, how was their rocket, how did they get the picture of their rocket landing on the moon? If you look it up, you will see pictures of them landing on the moon. That rocket landing on the moon, then they opened the door and then they stepped out of the rocket and then stepped foot on the moon. Who took the picture of that rocket? They claim to be the first on the moon. So who took the picture? Do they call some aliens and be like, hey, aliens, we're coming to the moon. Hey, be there. We're going to land at this time. We'd like you to take a picture of us landing and then give it to us when we land. It's a childish lie. So nobody stepped their foot on the moon. They never went to the moon. They will never go to the moon. They are liars. But, these are lies that Satan and his children are using to deceive the whole world. It's a bunch of lies. They never went to the moon. They will never go to the moon. Nobody has ever gone to the moon. Nobody will ever go to the moon. The Most High is greater than that. So, that's the question about the Sabbath, how to keep the Sabbath day holy. You are more than welcome to call in if you have any question. I'm going to be getting off. We dealt with 2 questions right now, and hopefully the scriptures that we looked at answered your question very well. I hope that you're satisfied. I hope that you get it. I hope that you will also go back and read those scriptures yourself. Read them yourself. Like as I said, you either have the sun and the moon versus man-made calendar. How else are you going to keep time? You either have the sun and the moon versus man-made calendar and create every year and decide where Sunday is going to be, where Christmas will be, what day Christmas will fall on, what day Easter will fall on, what day New Year's Eve will fall on. Somebody has to sit down and decide that and then give you that calendar. Is that what the Hebrew Israelite was using in the wilderness? Were they using a man-made Roman calendar? Or maybe you think that they were using that. No, they were using the sun and the moon. And the Bible is very clear in the book of Sirach that the Sabbath is determined by the moon. We read that, Sirach 43 verse 7, very clear. So the brother that asked this question, I hope that this answered your question. I hope that you can go back and read all these Bible verses for yourself. The moon regulates the Sabbath. The moon regulates the month. All right. So let's see. I don't see any other question over here in the comment section. So I'm going to assume that you don't have any more question. So these are everything that we just looked at right now. These are things that to think about and to act upon. You have to take this thing seriously. I hope that as we are going through all this, that you are able to pick up 1 or 2 things and see what's going on. We live in a world that is upside down, a world that is run by Satan, and he is using the people that he has given power. You can't look at the world right now and say that the Chinese are running the world, or the Africans are running the world, or the South Americans, the Latinos are running the world, or you can't say that, or the Middle Easterns are running the world. The Europeans are running the world, and everything that we just looked at right now, these are, you can see how they're running the world. And you look at Christianity, the education system, the entertainment industry, the fashion, all these things, these are from them, and we have to separate ourselves. We have to let go of their religion, Christian religion. We We have to let go of their calendar, the Roman calendar, the Gregorian calendar. We have to let go of their calendar. We have to let go of the way of dressing, the way they dress. We have to let that go. We have to dress the way our God wants us to dress. We have to dress moderately. If you're a woman, stay away from trousers, pants and trousers, leggings, jeans. Stay away from those things. You will not be saved if you're wearing those things. You are already doomed. You will not be saved. You have to stay away from those things. If you are a man, grow your beard. Grow your beard. We don't shave our beard. There's a reason why your God gave you a beard. When you shave your beard, you are saying that your God did not know what he was doing when he created you. Let your beard grow. If you are a man, stop shaving your 2, verse 3 to verse 6. By this we know that we know him. 1 John chapter 2, 3 to 6. By this we know that we know him, if we keep his commandment. Anyone that claims to know him but doesn't keep his commandment is a liar. You can't look at them and say that they're keeping the commandment. They don't. Leviticus 19:27 said that you shouldn't destroy the edges of your beard. Your garment. It's not expensive. This is very cheap. This is cheap. You can find it on Amazon. You can find it on eBay. You can make it yourself. It's cheap. Christ wore tassels. The apostles wore tassels. Just like our Heavenly Father told us to put it in our clothes. Wear your tassels. Stop dressing like the Gentiles. Shoes for little boys, little girls, old people, men, women. This is for everyone. It's time to begin to keep these laws and the commandment and stop following after the heathen. Our Heavenly Father says in Jeremiah chapter 10 verse 2, learn not the ways of the heathen. Learn not the ways of the Gentiles. These people are the Gentiles. They are the heathen. They currently control the world. I say that this is their heaven right now. This is their heaven. This is their earth. That's why this is their kingdom. That's why they do everything to quote unquote be successful. They will do anything to get money. They will do anything to get wealth. They will do anything to get materialism because this is their heaven right now. This is it for them. For us, we have to look forward to that kingdom. This is not our kingdom, and we have to show it with our action. Not just talking the talk. We have to walk the walk. When we claim that we love God, but we refuse to let go the things of the Gentiles, we're deceiving ourselves. Yes, there is health benefits because when you rest on the Sabbath day, that's the day that the Most High told you to rest. The question is, do you think there is health benefits to rest on the Sabbath, on the lunar Sabbath? Of course. Did you know that in heaven, they do observe? If you keep the Sabbath using the moon, you and I will observe the Sabbath the same day, regardless of anywhere you are. Just like we are in different parts of the world right now. When you observe the Sabbath using the moon, we will observe it in the same day. You and I may not even know each other. We will observe it the same day, regardless of where we are in the world. That's not a coincidence. According to the book of Jubilees, all these feast days, they also observe it in heaven, right now. Like yesterday being the Sabbath, they observe it in heaven. Just like our Heavenly Father said in Isaiah chapter 66. Isaiah chapter 66, verse 22 and 23. He said that from one new moon to the next, and one Sabbath to the next, that all flesh will come and worship before him. From one new moon to the next, and one Sabbath to the next. So even in the coming kingdom of heaven, we will be observing the Sabbath. Isaiah 66, verse 22 and 23. Tells you that in the kingdom of heaven, in the coming kingdom of the Most High, we will be observing the Sabbath and the new moon days. Isaiah 66, 22 and 23. The Most High observed the Sabbath from the beginning. They are observing it according to the book of Jubilees, right now, in heaven. Look at man-made calendar, how it changes. Do you think that they are using man-made calendar in heaven right now to observe the Sabbath? Do you really think so? The Most High was going to scatter his people from the four corners of the earth to the four corners of the earth, like we saw today in Luke chapter 21. His people have been scattered all over the world, but yet they are still commanded to observe the Sabbath wherever they are. How can they do that if not with the moon? Today you see people that will talk about Hebrew calendar. You see people that will talk about Hebrew calendar and they tell you to go to their website and download the Hebrew calendar. Really? Go to their website and download the Hebrew calendar? Okay. Were the Hebrew Israelite going to the website to download the Hebrew calendar? You're saying that the Sabbath is not regulated by the moon and that the calendar you have is the right calendar and you call it the Hebrew calendar. But the thing is that I have to go to your website and download the Hebrew calendar. Are you joking? Don't let people waste your time. Sometimes there's a lot of jokers on YouTube who will put up a serious face and make videos, but they are mocking you by the information that they have in that video, because when you believe them, they are playing games with you. They're wasting your time. So anyone that talks about a calendar that you have to go download somewhere, that's ridiculous. That I really question your intelligence if you believe that. But the calendar that you have that is up in the sky, where nobody can touch, that changes every night, that works as a calendar, nobody can touch that. It doesn't matter where you are. You can get lost in a desert somewhere, in a wilderness. You can get lost and you can still be able to keep the Sabbath. You can go into a coma and lose. The reason why we have to even talk about this, like debate this, it's just ridiculous. Because we're talking about the lunar calendar and a man-made calendar. Why anybody should be questioning it is just, I have no idea. But again, people question it because I know why. Because they're looking for a loophole. They're looking for an easy way out. They know that it's easier to keep the Sabbath on Saturday. That's the reason why. They know that they may have to quit their job. But I will tell you something. When I was keeping, I actually, if I can't think about it, I make more. Basically, like, I pretty much almost make, like, now I'm working less, because before you work 6 days a week or 7 days a week. So before I started keeping the Sabbath, when I was working before I began to keep the Sabbath, I make more now than some of the jobs I have before I began to keep the Sabbath. So what usually happens, I have said this in the past, when Yah give us his law, there are benefits behind his law. But he's not going to tell you, hey, keep my law and you will get this. No. Those people who are humble, who are truthful and honest and humble themselves and begin to keep those laws, they will reap the benefits. Fools will continue to look for excuses and loopholes, a way to not keep the law. And you will miss all the benefits that are behind those laws. I would never go back and stop keeping the Sabbath and go back to my old ways. No. So the question is, do you think there is a health benefit to rest on the lunar? Of course. First of all, you're keeping the Sabbath in the same day that is being kept in heaven right now, according to the book of Jubilees. You're observing it at the right day. And you're resting. What is greater than that? Knowing that you're doing it at the right day. A day that you did not choose. Saturday is chosen by someone. Very soon they will release the 2019 calendar. That 2019 calendar, people are sitting down right now in a computer and deciding where Sunday is going to fall on. Where Christmas will be on. When New Year will be. People will decide all of those things. And then they will give you that calendar for 2019. The calendar of the Most High is not like that. We don't get to choose when the Sabbath will be. It just happened naturally. So there are benefits when you rest on that day and worship on that day. So all praises to our Heavenly Father. If you have any question, feel free to call in right now.